Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And interesting, to say the least, of a week. And we get to the Hunter Biden. I love that he did the great – one thing about liberalism is they are so good at spinning things. They couldn't run a gas station, but they're great at politics. So he did his cleansing tour with the usual suspects, and yes, everything's great. And he was kind of positioned as the victim and an empathetic guy, even though he basically impregnated his dead brother's wife. Other than that, oh well, we all make mistakes. So now he's under investigation. Surprise, surprise, Dr. Lopkin.
Yeah, he's under investigation for tax fraud from the Attorney General of Delaware, and he's not under investigation for foreign fraud, but companies that he worked with are. And apparently this company representing the Ukraine energy firm that Hunter Biden worked with in 2016 was pushing access to Hillary Clinton while Biden was vice president. So, they were pushing his
thing,
father's access.
Yeah. Biden's now the uber woke president, uber woke. I mean, he's like an unbelievable. Not that he's actually orchestrating anything. Isn't Hunter the quintessential white privilege? If you're going to focus on someone that's got white / accent, the guy's got an IQ of maybe 80, whatever, goes to law. How did that all happen now, Dr. Lopkin? I mean, the guy's dumber than rocks.
Yes, Hunter Biden is the poster boy for white privilege. He rode his father's coattails. If Joe Biden hadn't had a political career, Hunter Biden would be saying, "Would you like fries with that?"
Oh, yeah, no, and a good day. Probably a crackhead, I'm sure his father lifted him up several times. It's unreported in the liberal press. But, yeah, the boy genius, how he even passed the bar is a bigger issue than the creation of the universe in my eyes. No. The guy is dumber than God.
Yeah, no, he is just riding his family name. And, let's face it, especially in politics, this is not only is it not unheard of, it's become commonplace where, politics is now a family business, and those family members that aren't running for office are benefiting from their family members' connections.
Well,
Being
a
in
perfect
public
example is the Kennedy. No, perfect example is the Kennedy family. I mean, JFK, genuinely a smart guy, without any question. Okay, there's just no doubt. And then it goes to Edward Kennedy. Okay, and then we get to some of the other geniuses in the family. What's her name? I forgot. That lost in Massachusetts because she was so dumb she couldn't get it together. How do you lose if you're a Kennedy in Massachusetts?
Yeah, let's give credit where credit is due. The Kennedy name was basically created not just by John F. Kennedy, who was very smart, but by Bobby Kennedy, who also was a very smart individual. Those two built up the political goodwill for their family, and basically everybody else just lived off of that.
Squandered it. Again, but they'll be the first to talk about Black Lives Matter. Well, they're beneficiaries, uber beneficiaries of white privilege. Hello.
And, I find the Kennedys hysterical because now both John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy would be thrown out of the Democratic Party for being too conservative. They were strong, centrist politicians. They had great ideas. They were, socially, they were very liberal, and they had great programs to back it up. But, now the Democratic Party would say they were far too conservative. We can't do anything they say.
Conservative? They're racist. Are you out of your mind? I mean, Bobby Kennedy was a strong supporter of Israel. That's why he was assassinated by a Palestinian extremist. No, they wouldn't be just not in favor. They'd be thrown out on their ass. How does that sound?
It just goes to show how far the Democratic Party has fallen. I mean, you have JFK. Again, it was called Camelot. That's the image that people had of him. He was progressive for the time, but he was far more conservative than the current Democrats. And, he had great programs. He worked with both sides of the aisle.
Fiscally conservative, by the way.
Yes, fiscally conservative. But, God forbid you should work across the aisle now. And in fact, if you remember during the Democratic debates, Kamala Harris went after Joe Biden because Biden was saying in his career he'd worked across the aisle.
Well, let me talk about, we didn't have this on the agenda, but Kamala. Was appointed for the duties of border security, has never done a press conference, has never been at the border. I have to ask and scratch my head, and I'll defer to you, Dr. Lopkin. Why was she ever appointed or nominated as vice president? She's not a good candidate, so it's not like she's going to pull any code strings, and totally devoid of any qualification to be anything but working in San Francisco. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, she's incredibly incompetent, but she was put on the ticket to placate the left-wing radicals, because the fact of the matter is Biden was considered too centrist by most of the left wing. And let's face it, you can't be too centrist. Centrist is neutral, by definition. But he was considered too centrist by the left-wing radicals, and the party knew if they could not get the left wing to support whatever candidate they had, they would stay home and Trump would be president right now.
Interesting. Yes, I completely agree with that. So there's some other interesting parts of the news. One of the things is the whole woke agenda. I wonder if that's not backfiring. There's been a lot of pushback on Coca-Cola, pushback on local school boards. And, let me ask you a question. And for our listeners who are tuning in, we went, before Nixon created the Department of Education, we were in the top 3 of industrialized nations in education. Dr. Lopkin, rhetorical question. Do you know where we are now?
I know we've fallen pretty far, but I don't know the exact
Okay, we're 25th,
position.
which is basically dead last. How do you sound that? It's like, And so we are in a global competition with China and the rest of the world. We are falling behind exponentially in everything that makes a difference, math, reading, all that kind of stuff, right? Yet, basically, the way I see this is that being woke approved is much more salient than a math score. And by the way, SATs are gone. How is that a prescription for success in the 21st century? Please help me out.
It's not a prescription for success. It is a guarantee of failure. And the big problem is that, and we've used this term over and over again regarding the condition of the country, but it all goes back to Casey Stengel. How did you do this badly? It was a team effort. because not only do you have the liberals pushing the woke agenda, but anytime the federal government seems to get involved in education, they screw it up. George W. with No Child Left Behind. In theory, this was a great idea. The problem is that it held everybody back because you were now teaching to the lowest common denominator, and so you had the right screwing that up. You have the left screwing up with the woke agenda and with the push that, everybody should get a liberal arts education and go to college. No, you know what? We don't need liberal arts majors. We need electricians and plumbers and engineers.
Well, actually, liberal arts is for the elite because they'll always survive. You can go to, some of these elite colleges and get your woke degree, and there might be actually, something I said that facetiously, there might actually be a woke degree. Don't laugh. So you get your woke degree.
It would not surprise me, but
so you get a woke degree from your liberal because daddy got you in, and daddy will get you up because it's all about don't do as I do, don't do as I say. Don't do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
And the fact is, these people know they have the golden parachute, so you can be woke and this and you walk around liberal neighborhoods. They all have, Black Lives Matter. Have no idea what the group's all about. It's just I'm woke, I'm cool. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Although you're starting to see pushback, and what I find absolutely amazing is you are now seeing major pushback by the parents of these students. Are you aware of where the pushback started?
I thought it was in Texas.
No, and that's the big surprise. The big
Virginia.
pushback.
It was Virginia.
No. The big pushback, the start there that everybody started noting, was by New York City parents. Liberal New York City parents in private schools. The private schools started teaching this woke agenda, and they went, oh no. I am paying $60,000 a year for my kid to go to school. You are going to teach him science and math and English, and you are not going to deal with this because I want my kid to have the skills to survive.
Okay, but doesn't it open up in the future maybe more opportunities for private institutions? I don't think it doesn't have legs. And I think the Democrats don't really understand real America. So, the woke thing, it got some traction, and these liberal elites, even though they had no connection to it, do that. They got their signs, they got all that crap. But I believe that might be their doom in the midterms. What do you think?
It's definitely going to harm them in the midterms. And quite frankly, they've already got a lot going against them in the midterms. But they're alienating their own base because they're pushing this woke, but it's only woke for certain groups. It's woke.
Jews are not included, by the way.
Right. Jews are not included.
They're done. They're gone.
It's crimes against Jews are up 47%. This is
how
the
come
largest.
I don't hear that on CNN,
yeah,
Dr. Lopkin?
This
how
is
come
the
I don't
largest.
Hear that on CNN?
Because it doesn't fit their agenda.
And is it more devious than that? Is that if the word got out to these, I don't know what they're doing, they must be really not the brightest wolves, but the liberal Jews out there, could it be that maybe if they got word that the party that you so love is actually working for your demise, that it might sway things? So they want to keep that hush-hush?
I would certainly think they would. I mean, traditionally, the Jewish voting bloc has voted Democrat. And it's one of the reasons New York City swings so heavily Democrat. But if these folks realized what these Democrats are doing, I mean, their own people have been yelling
these people are educated people. What the heck is going on, boy genius?
What's going on is that people are brainwashed. And this isn't just on the left. It happens on the right as well. They will not let the facts get in the way of their beliefs. And right now,
yes, I also think it's a point of it doesn't affect them. It's the intelligentsia saying, "Oh, I'm so woke, I'm so enlightened," and they know that it's only the electricians, the middle class, lower middle class, that this crap will ever affect. Are we going to a break, Dr. Lopkin?
We are going to a break, so hold that thought. We'll be right back.
To reach the next level, you need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And remember, if you're listening live and you want to be part of the conversation, you can call us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693.
Speaking of Jewish people that don't get it, what happened to our esteemed Richard Blumenthal, the man that couldn't get it's like bees to honey, couldn't get into before a microphone sooner rather than later. And Chucky Schumer loves to have, the cock glasses. Oh, my God, yeah, he's in touch with the people like I'm on the moon. Where are these people? They should be in a position where saying this doesn't really fit, or condemning Israel is not the. But where are they, Dr. Locke?
They should be front and center. And ironically, during the elections, Richard Blumenthal came out backing a local candidate because the local candidate was being criticized for overspending in the budget. And he claimed that it was not about overspending. It was anti-Semitism. He was, being called the cheap Jew. And he came out. Now, there was no anti-Semitic comments made against this candidate. It was a manufactured issue. For that, Blumenthal came out. But when real anti-Semitism rears its head with his Democratic colleagues over in Minnesota, he's nowhere to be found. He's radio silent.
Okay, and why doesn't his constituency in Connecticut call him out on that? He's Richard Blumenthal. You get him, even though he's from Connecticut, you get him, you watch MSNBC, he's the first one out ready to hit the mic. Any issue. It could be too much fat in peanut butter. It's Richard Blumenthal talking about how that's detrimental to society.
He has never met a mic he didn't like. He's never met a camera he didn't like, and yet he hasn't said a word on this. And the problem is the Connecticut voters, because I have actually spoken to Connecticut voters who have said they hate Richard Blumenthal. They can't stand him. Are you going to vote for him? Oh, yes, I'm going to vote for him because I can't vote Republican. They don't even.
When does that change? No, when does that change? That's pathetic, because starting with Jimmy Carter, actually starting with Richard Nixon, Jewish people around the United hated Richard. He was the savior of Israel during he put his own presidency behind the best interests of Israel. Golda Meir called him back and said, "Thank you for saving Israel." Jimmy Carter, no friend of Israel. Then he had Ronald Reagan, probably one of the top. Okay, and then Donald Trump. What is going on here? I mean, basically, you deserve what you get. I have no sympathy at some point.
That's it. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's, oh, well, it's not going to affect me directly, so I don't have to worry about it. I can vote for these clowns because you know what? They can be against Israel. Doesn't matter. It's not going to affect me, except you are seeing Jews in America being affected because, as I said, hate crimes against Jews are up 47%. There have been violence against Jews in California, the most liberal state in the country. They're seeing a huge up in hate crimes against Jews.
Well, I think it's bigger than that. I think Jews are no longer needed. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support. The door hit you on the ass because you went from 2% of the population to about less than 1. Who gives a flying you-know-what? Thank you for your support. And they used to be the, no pun intended, the chosen people of the Democratic Party, that and African Americans to some degree. But Jews were in the highest echelons of the Democratic Party, and now, check please, because they've been displaced by, I think, the Muslim population in America, much more in touch, or much more, a group that is much more involved in the Democratic Party, or they're involved with them. Comments?
Yeah, I think Jews have definitely been displaced in the party. I think part of it is that, Jews have always been taught to assimilate, because let's face it, when you spend thousands of years with everybody trying to kill you, you tend to assimilate into society so you're not noticed. Well, so now what you have is a bunch, Jewish voters who vote Democrat, and they're assimilated. Well, we don't look at Jewish issues because, we're looking out for the rest of the country. So they're voting for these folks that are bad for Judaism, they're bad for everything so far. I mean, take a look at what's going on. We've got what couldn't be a booming economy, and yet the jobs report came out, and because of policies by the Democrats, which, let's face it, they're passing things with no input from the Republicans, so you can't blame the Republicans for anything that's going on right now, and their policies have held back job growth.
It could have been the greatest economy, not for an extended period possibly, but the greatest economy in the last 50 years, and that's saying a lot. But because I think if you're a corporation and you're saying, God, we really do need to hire, but do you really want to do it under these? No, there's too much uncertainty because you got Dementia Joe in charge.
Well, honestly, it's not even uncertainty that's holding corporations from hiring. They're trying to hire. The problem is, and I've spoken to a number of business people that are all having the same problem, they're not getting resumes coming in. They're not getting people applying for the jobs because you're seeing all of these extended unemployment benefits paying more than the jobs will. Now, we'll see what happens with next month's jobs report, because 21 states, by the time the next jobs report comes out, will have ended the extended unemployment. So then people are going to have to go, all right, I can't live on this. I have to get a job again.
But you're talking about creating another underclass, because when you're out of a job, I mean real jobs. I'm not talking about, welcome to Walmart, a real job, corporate, teaching, whatever. When you're out of the workforce for more than a year, check please. So you're creating yet another underclass that's dependent. There's no way you're getting into a 500 company if you've been out of work for more than a year. Sorry, that is a fact. Actually,
that's really no longer the case, because one, this was a unique situation where they had to lay off people, and two, you're talking about skilled jobs. And right now, if you have skills, you can get a job. It doesn't matter how long you've been out of work. But what's really going on is they've extended these benefits. And yes, they were necessary because the government did shut down our economy. So people had to get this money in order to survive. But it also provides the perfect example of what would happen if they actually passed something that they've been talking about for quite a while. And it was big during the presidential campaign. If you remember, Andrew Yang was pushing this. Guaranteed income. Well, guess what? Now we're seeing if people have guaranteed income, they're not going back to work. They're taking that income and sitting on the sidelines, and that will cripple the economy.
I agree with that, but one thing I have to push back on is, skilled positions, in the STEM area. I'll get you that, Dr. Lopkin.
Yep.
If you are a marketing manager, marketing director, and you've been out of work for more than a year, then I am sorry, 0.0 chance. No, there's no way.
Yeah, but director positions aren't the people. Director positions aren't the people who are out of work. They're not the ones sitting on the sidelines.
I understand that, but if some fool thought that was a good idea to take they got laid off, it happened, to take your year vacation, and you were a director of marketing, may God bless you if your chances of coming back. Other people, that's completely different. I agree with you. But in marketing/management, and you've been out for more than a year, good luck. Let me know how it happens.
Well, again, it also depends on what you spent that year doing. The job market isn't that cut and dried anymore. So there's a lot of factors.
If you've been collecting benefits for a year, let me know how it goes. You might get some crappy job. You're not going to get any job at IBM if you've been out of work for a year. Anyone who asks you what you've been doing for the last year. Oh, collecting. Yeah, that's good.
But again, if you're taking online courses, you're good. You say IBM, like you use IBM as an example. These major tech firms are now saying, you know what? We don't even want a college degree anymore. Go get your professional certification. That's what we want. We don't want you going for a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. You want to get an associate's, that's great, as long as you've got the professional certification.
Oh, no, I completely 100% agree with everything you're saying. And let me be clear. If you can show an employer that over the last year I got a certification in internet security, in web development, fine. If you've been hanging around eating bombs for a year,
right,
good luck spinning that one.
Yeah, no, you can't have just sit home. Wow, my mouth just failed on that one. You cannot have just spent a year sitting at home. You had to be active. You had to be doing things. And we are just about
100%. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we are just about at the end of our time. So,
well, it's been a great conversation, and we will be back next week with a guest, and we hope everyone tunes in, and we'll also be back with Carnivore Bites on Wednesday, Dr. Lopkin.
Right. Remember, you can catch the replay of this as well as the Carnivore Bites podcast at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin.